I stood in my living room 3 hours after burying my oldest son, 32-year-old Bradley. My phone buzzed. It was Bradley's boss, Gerald, from the pharmaceutical company where Bradley worked as a senior data analyst. Gerald's voice shook. "Mom, I found something you must see. Come to my office right now. Don't tell anyone. It's dangerous." I drove to the office building. When I arrived, the person standing at the security door wasn't Gerald. It was Bradley's wife, Emma, who was supposed to be at her sister's house across the state. Emma's eyes were cold, empty, terrified. My heart hammered against my ribs as Emma's fingers dug into my forearm. She pulled me through the glass security door with a force that startled me. The building felt wrong, empty in a way that made my skin crawl. It was Saturday evening, well past business hours, and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry insects. "Emma, what are you doing here?" I whispered, my voice barely steady. "You told me you were driving to your sister's place in Pennsylvania. You left right after the funeral." Emma's face was pale, her makeup smeared from crying. Her hands trembled as she locked the door behind us. "Gerald called me too," she said, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "He said he found files on Bradley's computer." "Mom, Bradley didn't die of a heart attack. The medical examiner was wrong. Or worse, he was lying." The world tilted beneath my feet. "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, a figure emerged from the shadows near the elevator bank. Gerald looked like head aged 10 years since I'd seen him at the funeral that morning. His usually neat hair stood at odd angles. His shirt was wrinkled, and dark circles hung beneath his bloodshot eyes. He hadn't slept, maybe for days. "Joanna, thank God you came," he said, his voice hoarse. "We don't have much time. They could be watching." "Who could be watching?" I demanded, anger replacing my confusion. "Gerald, what is going on? My son is dead. I just put him in the ground, and now you're talking in riddles about danger and files." Gerald approached us, clutching a small thumb drive like it was a live grenade. "Your son was investigating something," he said quietly. "Something that got him killed." The air left my lungs. Emma grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. Gerald led us to a small conference room and locked the door. He pulled out a laptop and inserted the thumb drive with shaking fingers. "Bradley worked on clinical trial data for our new drug, Cardizine. You know the one. It's been all over the news. Heart disease prevention. $1 billion blockbuster. Launched 6 months ago." I knew it. Bradley had been proud of his work on that project. Head told me it would save lives. Gerald's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up spreadsheets and documents filled with numbers and medical terminology. But 3 months ago, Bradley started noticing discrepancies. Patient outcomes that didn't match the official reports. Data that had been altered. He went deeper, and he found the truth. The screen filled with highlighted sections, red flags marking inconsistencies. Gerald's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Cardizine doesn't prevent heart attacks. In 15% of patients with a specific genetic marker, it causes them." Bradley found at least 47 deaths that were never reported, never investigated. The company buried the evidence and rushed the drug to market anyway. My vision blurred. "No, that can't be true." Emma's grip on my hand tightened. "It gets worse," she whispered. "Bradley reported this to upper management 3 weeks ago. He met with 2 vice presidents and presented all his findings. They thanked him, told him they'd look into it, and sent him home." 2 days later, Gerald continued. Bradley collapsed at his desk. Massive heart attack. Dead before the ambulance arrived. 32 years old, no prior health problems, no family history of heart disease. But the medical examiner said it was natural causes. I protested weakly. "They did an autopsy. They said his heart just gave out. That sometimes these things happen." Gerald's jaw clenched. "The medical examiner receives consulting fees from Meridian Pharmaceuticals. $20,000 a year." I found the payment records in the financial files Bradley copied. The room spun. I reached for the table to steady myself. "You're saying my son was murdered?" Emma stood up, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. "Since the funeral, I've been getting these." She showed me a string of text messages from unknown numbers. "Stop asking questions or you're next. Your daughter doesn't need to lose both parents. Accidents happen to curious widows." Terror coursed through me. "Sophie. Where's Sophie?" "She's safe at my mother's house in Ohio," Emma said quickly. "I sent her there yesterday." "But Mom, These people, whoever they are, they're watching us. They know we're asking questions. Gerald stood and walked to the window, peering through the blinds into the dark parking lot. That's not all. He returned to the laptop and pulled up security camera footage. This is from the night before Bradley died. He came back to the office late to work on his report. Watch the timestamp, 11:43 at night. The grainy video showed the empty office floor. Then a figure in a maintenance uniform entered Bradley's cubicle. The person spent 4 minutes at Bradley's desk, opening drawers, handling items. When the person turned slightly, I could see they were carrying something small. Gerald froze the frame and zoomed in. Prescription bottles. Bradley took blood pressure medication. Just a low dose his doctor prescribed after a routine physical last year. This person switched his pills. My stomach churned. Switched them with what? Gerald pulled up another document. A toxicology analysis head apparently commissioned privately. With a medication that, when combined with the multivitamins Bradley took every morning, would trigger a massive cardiac event within 48 hours. Untraceable unless you knew exactly what to look for. The medical examiner didn't look because he was paid not to. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the conference room pressed in around me. My baby, my firstborn son, murdered. And hair's the worst part, Gerald said softly. He clicked to another file. Bradley had an appointment scheduled with an FDA investigator. He was going to blow the whistle, turn over all the evidence. The meeting was set for the day after he died. He never made it. The silence in that conference room felt suffocating. I stared at the evidence on the screen, my mind struggling to process the enormity of what Gerald had revealed. My son hadn't died of natural causes, had been murdered by his own company to protect their profits. We have to go to the police, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Right now, we take this evidence and we go to the authorities. Gerald shook his head slowly, his expression grim. I already considered that. It's not that simple. He pulled up more documents on the screen. The local police chief, Daniel Morrison, his brother sits on Meridian Pharmaceuticals' board of directors. He received $500,000 in company stock last year. And the medical examiner who signed Bradley's death certificate, Dr. Raymond Foster, has not just receiving consulting fees. His private practice got a $2 million research grant from Meridian last spring. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. That's why I've been so scared to say anything. After I got the first threatening text, I did some research. The connections run everywhere. Our mayor, our congressman, even the district attorney's office has taken campaign contributions from Meridian. How deep does this go? I asked, feeling the walls of corruption closing in around us. Deep enough that Bradley knew going to local authorities was useless, Gerald replied. That's why he contacted the FDA directly. He found an investigator with a reputation for taking on pharmaceutical companies, someone who couldn't be bought. Emma stood abruptly, pacing to the window. 3 days before Bradley died, he came home late. I was already in bed, but I heard him on the phone in his study. He was upset, arguing with someone. I got up to check on him, and when I opened the door, he ended the call quickly. I asked him what was wrong, and he pulled me close and said, "Emma, if anything happens to me, promise me you'll make sure my mom knows I loved her. Promise me you'll keep Sophie safe." Her voice broke, tears streaming down her face. I thought he was just being dramatic, stressed about work. I never imagined he was actually in danger. I should have pushed him to tell me more. I should have made him quit that job. I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around my daughter-in-law. This isn't your fault. None of us could have known, but the memory stirred something in my own mind. I remembered Sunday dinner the week before Bradley died. Wed had pot roast, his favorite. Sophie had been chattering about her ballet recital, and Emma had been laughing at something my younger son, Tyler, had said. But Bradley had been quiet, distracted. He kept checking his phone, his expression tense. When Id asked if everything was okay, Head smiled and said work was just busy. Now I understood. He'd been carrying the weight of this terrible secret, knowing he was putting himself at risk by pursuing the truth. "We need to contact that FDA investigator," I said firmly. "We have the evidence now. We can finish what Bradley started." Gerald moved toward the laptop to shut it down. "I have his contact information. Special Agent Marcus Shaw. He works out of the D.C. office. We can call him right now." But as Gerald reached for his phone, The screen went dark. He tapped it, pressed the power button. Nothing. Dead battery, he muttered. Let me use the conference room phone. He picked up the desk phone. The line was silent. No dial tone. He pressed the receiver button several times. Gerald's face went pale. The line's been cut. The lights in the conference room flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Emma grabbed my arm. What's happening? Gerald moved quickly to the door, pressing his ear against it. I hear footsteps. Multiple people. In the hallway. My heart thundered in my chest. We need to leave. Now. Gerald grabbed the laptop and thumb drive, shoving them into a messenger bag. There's a back stairwell that leads to the parking garage. If we move fast, we might make it. We slipped out of the conference room, into the darkened hallway. The emergency lights created pools of red illumination every 20 feet, leaving deep shadows in between. Somewhere on the floor above us, I heard the distinct sound of heavy footsteps and voices. This way, Gerald whispered, leading us toward a door marked emergency exit. We moved as quickly and quietly as we could, our shoes barely making a sound on the industrial carpet. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every distant sound made my pulse spike. We reached the stairwell door. Gerald eased it open, peering down into the concrete shaft. It looked clear. We descended 3 flights, moving as fast as we dared. The parking garage level was poorly lit, filled with concrete pillars and only a handful of cars scattered throughout the space. My car's over there, I whispered, pointing to my sedan about 50 feet away. We started toward it, but as we emerged from the stairwell entrance, the roar of engines echoed through the garage. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows came around the corner, their headlights flooding the space with blinding light. They stopped directly in front of us, blocking our path to my car. 4 doors opened. 4 men in dark suits stepped out, moving with the controlled precision of trained professionals. They weren't running, weren't rushing. They knew we had nowhere to go. Gerald stepped in front of Emma and me, his hands raised. We don't want any trouble. The lead man, tall with close-cropped gray hair and hard eyes, approached us. He reached into his jacket, and I braced myself for the worst. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a leather credential case and flipped it open. Special Agent Marcus Shaw, Federal Drug Administration, Office of Criminal Investigations. Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. Emma let out a choked sob. Agent Shaw's expression remained serious. Joanna Bennett? He looked at me directly. Your son contacted me 4 weeks ago. He was scheduled to meet with my team the day after he died. When he didn't show up, I knew something had gone very wrong. He knows, Gerald breathed. You knew Bradley was killed. Shaw nodded grimly. We've been investigating Meridian Pharmaceuticals for 8 months. Your son wasn't the first person to bring us evidence of fraud. But he was the first one who'd been on the inside, who had access to the raw data files. He was going to be our star witness. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. And someone inside the FDA leaked information about his cooperation. That's how they knew to target him before he could testify. There's a mole in my office, which is why I couldn't protect him, why I can't trust my own team. The parking garage suddenly felt colder. If you can't trust your own office, I said slowly, then how do we know we can trust you? Shaw's jaw tightened. Fair question. He gestured to his agents. These 3 men are the only people in the Bureau I know for certain aren't compromised. We've been working this case off the books, building evidence carefully. But without Bradley's files, without his testimony, our case falls apart. That's why I've been monitoring Gerald's office access. When I saw his security badge activated tonight, I knew something was happening. He looked at Gerald. Did you find Bradley's encrypted files? Gerald held up the messenger bag. Everything. Clinical trial data, financial records, emails from executives ordering the cover-up, even security footage of Bradley's medication being tampered with. Shaw's eyes blazed with intensity. Then we finally have what we need to take them down. But we need to move carefully. Meridian Pharmaceuticals has powerful friends, politicians, judges, law enforcement, at every level. We're talking about an $8 billion company that's willing to kill to protect its profits. Emma stepped forward. My daughter. They've been threatening Sophie. We need protection. You'll have it, Shaw promised. All of you. But first, we need to secure that evidence and get you somewhere safe. He pulled out his phone. I have a safe house 2 hours from here. Well, take you there, decrypt those files, and build an airtight case. For the first time since Gerald's call had shattered my grief that evening, I felt a glimmer of hope. My son had died trying to expose these monsters. But his sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. We were going to finish what had started. The safe house turned out to be a modest ranch home in a rural area outside the city, surrounded by farmland and accessible only by a long gravel driveway. Agent Shaw's team swept the property before allowing us inside. The interior was sparse but functional, furnished with basics and clearly designed for protection rather than comfort. Shaw set up his laptop on the kitchen table, while one of his agents stood watch at the front window and another monitored the perimeter cameras. Gerald sat down with Shaw's computer equipment, beginning the painstaking process of decrypting Bradley's files. "This is going to take several hours," Gerald said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Bradley used military-grade encryption. He wasn't taking any chances. Emma sat on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest. I made coffee, needing something to do with my hands while my mind raced with everything we'd learned. Agent Shaw joined me in the kitchen, speaking quietly. "Your son was remarkably brave," he said. "The first time he contacted me, he knew the risks. I told him we could offer witness protection, relocate him and his family after the trial. He said he'd think about it, but he never got the chance." I poured coffee into 2 mugs, my hands surprisingly steady. "Tell me about Meridian. How does a company get away with something like this?" Shaw leaned against the counter, his expression weary. "Money and power. The CEO, Richard Hastings, is worth about $8 billion. He has senators on speed dial, contributes to presidential campaigns, sits on advisory boards. Meridian employs 30,000 people across 12 states. They're one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in America. When you have that much influence, you can make problems disappear. Witnesses become unreliable. Evidence gets lost. Investigations stall." "But not anymore," I said firmly. "Not with what Bradley found." Shaw's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and stepped away to take the call. I watched him through the kitchen doorway, saw his expression darken as he listened. Emma's phone rang. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. "It's my mom," she answered, and I heard her mother's frantic voice even from across the room. "Emma, Sophie's gone. We were at the park." I turned my back for just a minute to get her jacket from the car. And when I looked back, she wasn't on the swings. "I've looked everywhere. I've called the police. Emma, I can't find her." Emma's scream tore through the safe house. Everyone froze. "No, no, no, Mom, keep looking. I'm coming right now." Shaw was already moving toward her. "What happened?" "Sophie." Emma could barely get the words out. "She's missing. My mother took her to the park and someone took her." Before anyone could respond, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at the screen and her whole body started shaking. She held it up for us to see. The image showed Sophie sitting in the back seat of a car, tears streaming down her little face. The message below read, "Bring us the files and the girl lives. You have 4 hours. Come alone to the old Riverside warehouse on Fletcher Street. No police or she dies." Emma collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "She's 6 years old. She's just a baby. They have my baby." Shaw moved quickly, already coordinating with his agents. "We can track them, set up a tactical response. This is what we do." But Emma was hysterical. 4 hours. They said 4 hours. And they said come alone. If they see police, they'll kill her. I sat beside Emma, pulling her close while my own heart shattered. Sophie, Bradley's stepdaughter whom Head adopted and loved like his own flesh and blood. Head called her his little princess. Now she was in the hands of monsters. I looked at Shaw. "Can you rescue her?" "We'll do everything we can," he said. "But I won't lie to you. These people are desperate. They've already committed murder. Hostage situations are volatile." Emma looked up, her eyes wild. "Then I'll go. I'll bring them the files. I'll do whatever they want." "That's exactly what they're counting on," Shaw said gently. "They'll take the files, destroy the evidence, and then kill both of you. We can't let that happen." I stood up, an idea forming. What if I go instead? In the dark, at a distance, I could pass for Emma. We're similar height and build. I could buy you time to get into position for a rescue. Shaw studied me. "You'd be walking into extreme danger. I'm 63 years old, I said. I've lived a full life. Sophie is 6. And she's all I have left of my son. If there's a chance to save her, I'll take it. Emma grabbed my hands. Mom, I can't lose you too. You won't, I promised, with more confidence than I felt. Agent Shaw and his team will be there. Well, get Sophie back. Shaw began planning the operation, spreading out maps of the warehouse district on the table. Gerald continued working on the encrypted files, his fingers moving frantically across the keyboard. An hour passed. Then another. Gerald made progress, unlocking layer after layer of Bradley's security protocols. Emma paced the living room, checking her phone every 30 seconds. I sat quietly, thinking about Bradley, about Sophie, about how we'd gotten to this nightmare moment. Shaw's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went rigid. Where? When? He ended the call and turned to Gerald. We have a problem. There's been an accident. Your son. Gerald's head snapped up. Thomas? What about Thomas? Shaw's expression was carefully neutral. I just got a call from local police. Your son was in a car accident about 20 minutes ago. He's alive, but they're transporting him to County General. The officer said it looked serious. Gerald stood so abruptly, his chair fell backward. I have to go. I have to get to the hospital. We need you here, Shaw said. We're so close to unlocking those files. That's my son, Gerald shot back. I'm not losing him. The words hung in the air. Gerald grabbed his jacket, his face pale. I'm sorry. I have to make sure Thomas is okay. He picked up the messenger bag with the laptop and thumb drive. I'll make a backup copy at the 24-hour office supply store on the way to the hospital. Then, I'll come right back. Shaw tried to stop him, but Gerald was already moving toward the door. One of Shaw's agents followed him out, and I heard the sound of a car engine starting, tires crunching on gravel. Emma looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. His son. Of course he has to go. We waited. 30 minutes passed. Shaw tried calling Gerald. No answer. Another 30 minutes. Shaw pulled up tracking software on his computer, locating Gerald's phone signal. His expression turned to stone. Hes at Meridian Pharmaceuticals headquarters. That doesn't make sense, I said. The hospital is in the opposite direction. Shaw was already on his phone, barking orders to his agents. He ended the call and looked at Emma and me, his face a mask of controlled fury. There was no accident. I just confirmed with County General. No teenager named Thomas was admitted tonight. No car accidents reported in the last 3 hours matching that description. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Gerald betrayed us. Shaw nodded grimly. He was working for them all along. This whole thing tonight, the files, the evidence, it was a setup. They needed to know who else knew about Bradley's investigation. They needed to find and destroy all copies of the evidence, and we led them right to it. But the files, Emma said desperately. He has everything. Shaw's jaw clenched. I know. And now Meridian has it all. We're back to square one. No evidence, no case. He looked at his watch. And Sophie is still missing, with less than 2 hours until the deadline. The safe house felt like it was closing in around me. Emma sat on the couch, rocking back and forth, her face buried in her hands. Agent Shaw paced the kitchen, speaking rapidly into his phone, trying to coordinate some kind of response despite having lost our only leverage. His agents moved through the house with grim expressions, everyone understanding that Gerald's betrayal had just made an impossible situation catastrophic. I stood at the window, staring out at the dark fields beyond the property, my mind working through everything that had happened. Gerald had seemed so genuine, so frightened, but had been playing us the entire time. The question was why. Shaw ended his call and returned to the living room. His superiors had finally weighed in on the investigation, and from his expression, it wasn't good news. My assistant director just ordered me to stand down, he said quietly. The pressure from above is too intense. Meridian has lawyers calling the deputy director, members of Congress asking questions about our investigation. Without the physical evidence, without Bradley's files, there's no case. They're shutting us down. You can't be serious, I said. They murdered my son. They're holding a 6-year-old hostage. And your bosses are just going to let them get away with it? Shaw's hands clenched into fists. I'm not giving up, but officially, I can't pursue this anymore. If I continue, I'll be fired. possibly arrested for insubordination. He looked at us both. "I'm sorry." I tried. Emma stood up, her voice rising. "So that's it? We just let them kill Sophie too? We do nothing?" "I'm not saying that," Shaw said. "We still have 90 minutes. We can set up surveillance at the warehouse, try to get eyes on Sophie, coordinate with local SWAT teams. But without the files, we have no bargaining position," I said. "They'll know we're bluffing." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the truth. Without evidence, without leverage, we were powerless. But then something clicked in my mind. A memory from years ago, when Bradley was just 12 years old. It had been my birthday, and Head created an elaborate treasure hunt for my present. Head hidden clues all over the house, each one leading to the next, with multiple backup hiding spots in case someone accidentally discovered one of his clues early. Even as a child, Bradley had understood the importance of redundancy, of having a backup plan. "He always had contingency plans," I said slowly. Everyone turned to look at me. When Bradley was younger, he never did anything without a backup. If he was going to risk his life by investigating Meridian, he wouldn't have kept all his evidence in one place. Shaw stepped closer. "What are you thinking?" I closed my eyes, trying to remember. "Last week, the week before he died, Bradley came to my house. It was Sunday evening, after dinner. He asked if he could go up to the attic, said he wanted to look through some old photo albums. I thought it was strange timing, because it was the anniversary of his father's death, my late husband. I assumed Bradley was feeling nostalgic, wanting to see pictures of his dad." Emma stood up. "But you think it was something else?" Shaw was already grabbing his car keys. "Where are these photo albums now?" "Still in my living room," I said. "I brought them down from the attic for him and never put them back." We moved fast. Shaw drove while his 2 agents followed in another vehicle. Emma sat in the back seat with me, gripping my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. The drive back to my house took 40 minutes, every second feeling like an eternity, while the clock counted down towards Sophie's deadline. My house was dark and quiet, exactly as I'd left it that morning before Bradley's funeral. A lifetime ago, Shaw's agents cleared the house room by room while we waited outside. When they gave the all clear, we hurried inside. The photo albums sat on my coffee table where Eid left them, 3 heavy books bound in worn leather. I picked up the first one, my hands trembling, and began paging through it. Bradley as a baby. His first birthday. Kindergarten graduation. Shaw and Emma searched the other 2 albums while I continued through mine. "There has to be something," Emma whispered. "Please, Bradley. Please have left us something." I reached the last page of the first album. Nothing. I set it aside and picked up the second. More family photos, holidays, summer vacations. I was starting to lose hope when my fingers brushed against something behind one of the plastic photo sleeves. "Wait," I breathed. "There's something here." I carefully peeled back the plastic. Taped to the back of a photo from Bradley's high school graduation was a small micro SD card, no bigger than my fingernail. My heart leaped. Shaw immediately pulled out his phone, which had an adapter for the tiny card. He inserted it, and we all crowded around the screen as files began to populate. Spreadsheets, emails, video files, scanned documents. Everything. "He made a backup," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. He knew. He knew they might come after him. Shaw scrolled through the files, his expression growing more intense with each document. "This is incredible. Clinical trial data, financial records, internal memos about covering up patient deaths." He kept scrolling. "And look at this. A video file titled, 'For Mom.'" I took the phone with shaking hands and pressed play. Bradley's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his home office, the one with the photos of Sophie on the wall behind him. He looked tired, frightened, but determined. "Mom," his recorded voice said, "if you're seeing this, I'm probably dead. I'm sorry. I never wanted to put you through this pain, but I couldn't let them get away with killing people for profit. Cardizine is dangerous. At least 47 people have died because Meridian falsified clinical trial data and rushed a deadly drug to market. I reported it. I did everything right. But they're too powerful, and I don't think I'm going to survive this." Tears blurred my vision as I watched my son's final message. "Everything you need is on this card," Bradley continued. "Names, dates, financial transactions, evidence of bribery. I've identified everyone involved, including Gerald Morrison. who pretended to be my friend while reporting everything I did back to the executives. He pointed toward the camera. Please finish what I started. Don't let my death be meaningless. And tell Sophie I love her. Tell her Papa Bradley tried to do the right thing. The video ended. I held the phone to my chest, sobbing. Shaw gently took it from me and immediately began uploading the files to a secure federal server with multiple redundant backups. Now we have what we need, he said grimly. This is everything. Bradley documented the entire conspiracy. He even recorded conversations with executives. This is grounds for dozens of arrests. But we still don't have Sophie, Emma said, her voice breaking. And we're running out of time. Shaw checked his watch. 45 minutes until the deadline. He looked at me. Are you still willing to go to that warehouse? Yes, I said without hesitation. Now more than ever. But this time, we have real leverage. Shaw made several rapid phone calls, coordinating his tactical team. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, his expression changing from grim determination to complete shock. What is it? I asked. He answered, listened, and then slowly held the phone away from his ear. It's Richard Hastings, the CEO of Meridian. He wants to talk to you, Joanna. He says he's standing on your front porch right now. I moved to the window and pulled back the curtain. Sure enough, a black limousine sat in my driveway. Standing on my porch, flanked by 2 bodyguards, was a man in an expensive suit. His shoulders were slumped, his face haggard. Shaw's agents immediately took defensive positions, but I opened the door. Richard Hastings looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I didn't expect. Genuine anguish. Mrs. Bennett, he said, his voice rough. I need to talk to you. Please. It's about my daughter. Richard Hastings stood on my porch like a man who'd aged 20 years overnight. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, and his eyes were red-rimmed. The bodyguards flanking him looked uncomfortable, as if they weren't sure they should even be there. Agent Shaw stepped forward, positioning himself between Hastings and me. You have 30 seconds before I arrest you for conspiracy to commit murder. Hastings held up his hands. I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here because my daughter died yesterday. 16 years old. Massive heart attack. No warning, no prior health issues. He swallowed hard. She was taking cardizine. The doctors prescribed it 6 months ago because she had a minor heart murmur, nothing serious. They said the drug would prevent any future problems. The words hung in the air. Emma moved to stand beside me, her hand finding mine. Your drug killed your own child, I said, the bitter irony not lost on me. Hastings nodded, tears streaming down his face. I found out about the falsified data this morning. One of my executives finally broke down and told me the truth. About the genetic markers, about the cover-up, about the patients who died. He looked at me directly. About your son. Shaw's hand hovered near his weapon. So you knew about Bradley Bennett. Not until today, Hastings said quickly. I swear to you, Gerald Morrison and my executive vice president, Donald Price, they kept it from me. They altered reports before they reached my desk. They told me the clinical trials were clean, that the FDA approval was legitimate. I trusted them. He laughed bitterly. I was so focused on stock prices and market share that I didn't look closely enough at what was happening in my own company. And now you want forgiveness? Emma's voice was sharp, angry. Your people murdered my husband. They're holding my daughter hostage, and you want us to feel sorry for you? No, Hastings said. I don't want forgiveness. I want to make this right. My daughter is dead because of my negligence. Because I built a company where profit mattered more than truth. I can't bring her back. I can't bring your husband back. But I can help you save your daughter and bring these people to justice. Shaw studied him carefully. Why should we trust you? Because I have nothing left to lose, Hastings replied. My daughter was everything to me. Her mother died when she was 3. It was just the 2 of us. And now she's gone, killed by the product I put my name on. He pulled out his phone. I know where Sophie is being held. My head of security, Patrick Sullivan. He's the one who orchestrated the kidnapping. I have access to his security systems, his communications. I can help you get her back. Shaw glanced at me, then at Emma. His tactical training was warring with his instinct that Hastings might be telling the truth. I can give you building layouts, security codes, real-time camera feeds, Hastings continued. And after we get Sophie to safety, I'll testify. I'll provide every financial record, Every internal communication. Everything you need to dismantle the entire conspiracy. Price, Morrison, Sullivan, everyone involved. Emma stepped forward. If you're lying, if this is some kind of trap, I'll kill you myself. Hastings met her eyes. I understand, and I wouldn't blame you. Shaw made a decision. All right, you're coming with us. But if anything goes wrong, you're the first person I'm arresting. He turned to his agents. Get him in the vehicle. We're moving now. The drive to the Riverside Warehouse District took 20 minutes. Hastings sat in the back of Shaw's SUV, his fingers flying across his phone, pulling up security systems and building schematics. The warehouse was an old concrete structure on the edge of the river, abandoned for years and scheduled for demolition. Patrick has 4 men with him, Hastings said, studying the live security feeds. They have Sophie in a second-floor office, northwest corner. He zoomed in on a camera image, and I could see Sophie sitting on a chair, her hands bound, her face streaked with tears. 2 armed men stood guard at the door. Emma made a sound like a wounded animal. Shaw put a hand on her shoulder. We're going to get her out. Shaw coordinated with his tactical team, who'd been monitoring the warehouse. With Hastings' security codes, they could disable the alarms and access the building through multiple entry points. The plan was precise. Shaw's team would breach from 3 directions simultaneously, overwhelming the guards before they could react. I would drive up to the front entrance at the appointed time, drawing Patrick's attention while the tactical team moved into position. You don't have to do this, Shaw told me as we prepared. My officers can handle it. But I shook my head. Sophie knows me. If she sees me, she'll know help is coming. And if something goes wrong, I want to be there. We synchronized our watches. 10 minutes until the deadline. I got into my car, Bradley's thumb drive in my pocket, even though we all knew it was empty. Just a decoy. Emma wanted to come with me, but Shaw refused. She waited in one of the SUVs with Hastings, watching through the security feeds on his phone. I drove slowly toward the warehouse, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The building loomed ahead, dark and threatening against the night sky. I parked in front of the main entrance and stepped out. A man emerged from the shadows, tall, muscular, with cold eyes. Patrick Sullivan. Mrs. Bennett, he said, his voice emotionless. You have the files? I held up the thumb drive. Let me see Sophie first. Patrick gestured, and one of his men brought Sophie to a second-floor window. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, but she was alive. She saw me and cried out, Grandma Joe! I waved to her, trying to smile reassuringly. It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. The files, Patrick repeated. Through the window behind Patrick, I saw shadows moving. Shaw's team, in position. Just a few more seconds. I stepped forward, holding out the thumb drive. Patrick reached for it. And that's when everything happened at once. Flashbang grenades exploded through multiple windows. Shaw's tactical team swarmed the building from 3 directions, their voices shouting commands. Patrick dove for cover, reaching for his weapon. But agents were already on him, driving him to the ground. I ran toward the building. Shaw's team had Sophie within seconds, one of the agents scooping her up and carrying her out. Emma burst from the SUV, running toward her daughter. They collided in the parking lot, Emma sobbing, Sophie crying, both of them holding each other like they'd never let go. Patrick and his 3 accomplices were on the ground, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Shaw stood over them, his weapon drawn, reading them their rights. But something was wrong. Shaw's radio crackled, one of his agents speaking urgently. Sir, we're missing someone. Gerald Morrison isn't here. I looked around the warehouse complex. If Gerald had betrayed us, where was he? Shaw's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression hardening. He turned to me. Gerald's at the medical examiner's office. Hes destroying the physical autopsy files for Bradley and 6 other suspicious deaths connected to Cardazine. Without those files, Emma said, her voice muffled against Sophie's hair, any defense attorney will claim the digital evidence was fabricated. But then Shaw's phone rang again. This time, when he answered, his eyebrows rose. He put the call on speaker. Gerald's voice came through, shaking and tearful. Agent Shaw, I can't do this anymore. They have my son. They told me if I didn't help them, they'd kill Thomas. The accident was fake. It was leverage. But I can't destroy evidence of 7 murders. I just can't. Your son was my friend, Mrs. Bennett. I'm so sorry, Gerald, Shaw said carefully. Where is Thomas? Meridian's private research facility, about 15 miles outside the city. Building C, basement level. They're holding him there. Gerald's voice broke. Please get him out. Then I'll give you everything. I'll testify against all of them. But please save my son. Shaw was already coordinating with another tactical team. We're sending officers now. You stay exactly where you are and don't destroy anything. I won't, Gerald promised. I'm securing the files. I'm done being their puppet. Emma held Sophie close, rocking her gently. Sophie had stopped crying, clinging to her mother with desperate strength. Hastings approached them slowly, keeping his distance. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Your daughter shouldn't have been put through this. None of this should have happened. Emma looked up at him, her eyes hard. Your apologies don't bring back my husband, but they might save other families. So when this goes to trial, you'd better tell the truth. All of it. I will, Hastings promised. I'll spend whatever's left of my life making this right. 20 agonizing minutes later, Shaw's phone rang again. His face relaxed slightly. We have Thomas. Hes safe. Scared, but unharmed. Gerald collapsed in relief, and through the phone connection, I could hear him sobbing. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of federal agents, attorneys, and coordinating witness statements. Agent Shaw's team secured the medical examiner's office, protecting the physical autopsy files that Gerald had refused to destroy. Thomas Morrison was reunited with his father in federal custody, both of them placed in protective witness programs. The evidence was overwhelming. With Bradley's encrypted files, the physical autopsy records, Gerald's testimony, and Hastings' complete cooperation, Shaw had everything he needed to dismantle the entire conspiracy. Federal warrants were issued for 12 Meridian Pharmaceuticals executives. FBI teams fanned out across 3 states, making arrests. The CEO's executive vice president, Donald Price, who had orchestrated the cover-up and ordered Bradley's murder, was the primary target. But when agents arrived at his home in an exclusive gated community, they found it empty. His wife claimed she hadn't seen him in 2 days. His passport was missing. His personal bank accounts had been drained. Price had run. A nationwide manhunt began. His face appeared on news broadcasts. Airports were alerted, border crossings monitored. But 2 days passed with no sign of him. I stayed with Emma and Sophie during this time. Sophie was in therapy, processing the trauma of her kidnapping. She had nightmares, woke up crying for her Papa Bradley. Emma held her through it all, being strong for her daughter while grieving for her husband. We'd gone to Emma's house to pack some clothes for an extended stay at my place when Emma's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Donald Price's voice came through the speaker, cold and venomous. You've destroyed my life. Everything I built, everything I worked for, gone. Because your husband couldn't mind his own business. Emma put the phone on speaker, her hand shaking. Shaw had given us instructions for exactly this scenario. I pulled out my own phone and texted Shaw. Price is calling. I'm not going to prison, Price continued. I'd rather die than spend the rest of my life in a cage. But neither are you going to live happily ever after. You took everything from me, so I'm coming for you. For your daughter, for Bradley's mother. You'll never feel safe again. Every shadow, every unexpected sound. You'll wonder if it's me. Emma's face was pale, but her voice was steady. You're a coward, Donald Price. You murdered my husband to protect your illegal profits. You kidnapped a 6-year-old child. And now you're running because you don't have the courage to face justice. Price laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Justice. There's no justice in this world, just power and money. I had both, and you took them away. So now I'll take what matters to you. The line went dead. Shaw called within seconds. We traced the call. Hes in the city, less than 3 miles from your location. I'm sending a protection detail to you right now. Get Sophie, and get out of that house. But before we could move, the security system alarm blared. Someone had breached the back door. Emma grabbed Sophie, and I pulled them both toward the front entrance. Through the kitchen doorway, I saw a figure in dark clothes moving through the house. Shaw's protective detail arrived within minutes. 4 agents with weapons drawn. They swept the house room by room while we waited in an armored SUV. The figure had escaped through a side window, but they'd left something behind. A message spray-painted on Emma's kitchen wall. "You're next." That was the final straw. Shaw moved us to a secure federal facility while his team intensified the search for Price. Police established a perimeter around Emma's neighborhood. Helicopters with thermal imaging swept the area. It was nearly midnight when an officer spotted movement in a wooded area behind Emma's house. Price had been hiding there, watching the house, waiting for another opportunity. When police attempted to approach, Price pulled a weapon. The standoff lasted 20 minutes. Police negotiators tried to talk him down, but Price was beyond reason. His entire world had collapsed. His fortune was frozen, his reputation destroyed, his freedom gone. Had murdered a good man, terrorized a family, and now faced life in prison. In his final moments, Donald Price made his choice. He refused to surrender, raised his weapon toward the officers, and forced their hand. The gunfire echoed through the quiet neighborhood. When it ended, Price was dead. Shaw called me with the news. "It's over," he said simply. "Has gone. You're safe now." I sat in the federal facilities conference room, Emma and Sophie asleep in an adjoining room, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not tears of relief, but of grief. Bradley was still gone. My son, my firstborn, the baby boy I'd raised to be honest and brave and good. Had paid for those virtues with his life. But he hadn't died in vain. Because of Bradley's courage, Cardizine was being pulled from the market. Because of his evidence, an entire criminal conspiracy was being dismantled. Because of his sacrifice, lives would be saved. 3 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse and watched as the last of the Meridian Pharmaceuticals executives were sentenced. Gerald Morrison received 3 years for obstruction of justice, with credit for his cooperation under duress and his ultimate decision to preserve the evidence. The judge noted that without Gerald's testimony and his refusal to destroy the autopsy files, the case might never have succeeded. Patrick Sullivan, who had orchestrated Sophie's kidnapping and multiple other acts of intimidation, received 25 years. Other executives involved in the fraud and cover-up received sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. Richard Hastings stood before the judge, no longer the billionaire CEO but a broken man who'd lost everything that mattered. The judge was harsh but fair. Hastings received 15 years for his role in the fraud, though his cooperation and genuine remorse factored into a reduced sentence. Before being led away, he turned to Emma and me. "I know this doesn't bring them back," he said quietly, "but every penny of my personal fortune, $8 billion, is going into a victim compensation fund. It's being administered independently. Every family harmed by Cardizine will receive compensation. It won't heal the wounds, but it's all I can offer." Emma nodded. "Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. Your daughter deserved better than what happened to her. So did my husband. They both deserved better than me," Hastings agreed. Then he was gone, escorted by federal marshals. The FDA announced a complete recall of Cardizine worldwide. Over 300,000 patients were contacted and transitioned to alternative medications. An investigation revealed 47 confirmed deaths directly attributable to the drug, with potentially dozens more cases being re-examined. Agent Shaw was promoted to head a new FDA task force focused specifically on pharmaceutical fraud. Had become a friend through the ordeal, checking in on us regularly, making sure we had the support we needed. Emma returned to her job teaching 3rd grade. She'd taken a semester off to focus on Sophie. But eventually, both of them needed routine and normalcy. Sophie was doing better. The nightmares less frequent. She'd started talking about Bradley more, sharing happy memories, instead of just grief. One Saturday afternoon, Sophie asked if we could visit Papa Bradley's grave. We drove to the cemetery, the 3 of us, carrying flowers. Sophie had picked daisies because Bradley used to call her his little Daisy. As we stood at the grave, Sophie looked up at me with Bradley's same thoughtful expression. "Grandma Joe, was Papa Bradley a hero?" I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, sweetheart. He was a hero. He saw people being hurt. And even though it was scary, even though bad people tried to stop him, he did the right thing. That's what heroes do. I want to be like him when I grow up," Sophie said solemnly. Emma smiled through her tears. He would love that. The media attention had been intense. Bradley's story had become national news. Journalists called him a whistleblower hero who'd given his life to expose corporate corruption. Articles detailed his investigation, his courage, the ultimate price Head paid. A foundation was established in Bradley's name, dedicated to protecting corporate whistleblowers and their families. The first annual Bradley Bennett Award for Truth in Medicine was announced, recognizing journalists and investigators who exposed healthcare fraud. I was asked to speak at the awards ceremony. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, I thought about everything we'd been through. The grief, the fear, the moments when hope seemed impossible, but also the courage of strangers who'd become allies. The complexity of people like Gerald and Hastings, who'd made terrible choices but ultimately chose redemption. I told Bradley's story, not just the facts of the case, but who he was as a person. The boy who'd created elaborate treasure hunts. The man who'd adopted Sophie and loved her as his own. The analyst who couldn't turn away from evidence of wrongdoing even when it would have been safer to do so. My son taught me something in his death that I thought I already knew in his life, I said, my voice steady and clear. He taught me that one person, armed with the truth, can stand against an empire. That doing the right thing often means being afraid and doing it anyway. That justice isn't just about punishment, but about making sure the harm stops, that no one else suffers the same fate. I paused, gathering my thoughts. When Bradley died, I could have collapsed under the weight of grief. Part of me wanted to. But finishing his fight became my way of honoring him, of making sure his death meant something. I found allies in unexpected places, even among those who'd made terrible mistakes but chose to make them right. Gerald Morrison was coerced and manipulated. But when the moment came to do irreversible evil, he chose courage. Richard Hastings built an empire on negligence and greed, but when he saw the true cost, he dedicated everything to making amends. I looked directly at the cameras broadcasting the ceremony. These weren't simple villains in a simple story. They were human beings who made choices, both terrible and redemptive. That's important to remember, because each of us faces choices every day. When we see something wrong, do we look away or speak up? When we make mistakes, do we compound them or correct them? When powerful people tell us to stay quiet, do we comply or resist? Emma and Sophie sat in the front row, both of them smiling at me through tears. Bradley chose truth over safety, I continued, and that choice cost him his life. But because of it, Cartazine will never harm another patient. Because of it, dozens of criminals are in prison. Because of it, families who lost loved ones have acknowledgement and compensation. Because of it, the FDA has stronger protections for whistleblowers. His death was a tragedy, but his legacy is lives saved, justice served, and a reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to accept injustice. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. I stepped away from the podium, my heart full of pain and pride in equal measure. In the months that followed, I wrote a book about Bradley's life and our fight for justice. Publishers had approached me immediately after the trial, but it needed time to process everything, to make sure I could tell the story with the honesty it deserved. The book became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to the Victim Compensation Fund and the Whistleblower Protection Foundation. I did interviews, spoke at conferences, met with families affected by pharmaceutical fraud. Each story I heard reinforced the importance of what Bradley had done, what we'd all fought for. One afternoon, a year after Bradley's death, I visited his grave alone. I brought flowers and sat on the grass beside his headstone, talking to him the way I had when he was alive. I told him about Sophie's progress, how Shed joined the school choir and was learning to play piano. I told him about Emma, who'd started dating again, cautiously but hopeful. I told him about the foundation, the lives being saved, the changes being made. And I told him I was proud, so incredibly proud of the man Head become. The courage Head shown, the difference Head made. A year and a half after that terrible night when Gerald's call had shattered my grief, I stood with Emma and Sophie in the cemetery again. This time, we were planting something permanent. A young oak tree, strong and enduring, positioned beside Bradley's headstone, where its branches would eventually shade his resting place. Sophie helped me dig the hole, her small hands working beside mine. Emma steadied the sapling as we positioned it carefully, making sure the roots had room to spread and grow. When it was planted and watered, Sophie stepped back and studied it seriously. Will Papa Bradley like it? I knelt beside my granddaughter, this brave little girl who'd survived so much. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. He'll love it. And as it grows, Well, come here and watch it together. Well, remember him and everything he stood for. Sophie leaned against me. Grandma Joe, you know what Papa Bradley told me once? He said, being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, but you do the right thing anyway. Tears stung my eyes. That's exactly right, sweetheart. That's exactly what it means. Emma joined us, the three of us standing together as the sun broke through the clouds overhead, casting light across the cemetery. The oak trees, small leaves rustled in the breeze. Life went on, forever changed but filled with purpose and hope. The pain of losing Bradley would never fully heal, but it had transformed into something else. A commitment to truth, a dedication to justice, a determination to make sure his sacrifice mattered. Every day, I woke up and chose to honor his memory by living with the same courage had shown, by speaking up when I saw injustice, by supporting others who found themselves fighting impossible battles against powerful forces, by teaching Sophie that one person really can make a difference. My son had stood against an empire and won, not through wealth or power, but through truth and courage and an unwillingness to look away from suffering. Head paid the ultimate price for that choice. But his legacy lived on in every patient who would never take Cartazine, in every whistleblower who now had stronger protections, in every family that wouldn't suffer what Wed endured. That's not just justice. That's love made visible. That's how we turn tragedy into meaning, grief into purpose, loss into lasting change. And as I stood in that cemetery with my daughter-in-law and granddaughter, watching the young oak tree that would grow tall and strong in Bradley's honor, I understood something profound. We don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we always get to choose how we respond. We can collapse under the weight of injustice, or we can rise up and fight back. We can accept that the powerful make the rules, or we can stand for truth, even when it's terrifying. Bradley made his choice. And when he was gone, I had to make mine, to let his death be meaningless, or to finish what he started. The choice was obvious, even though the path was hard. That's what Id learned through it all. That grief can become purpose. That one person with evidence and courage can topple giants. That justice isn't just about punishment but about preventing future harm. That even those who've done terrible things can choose redemption if they have the courage. My son taught me that. And I'd spend the rest of my life making sure others learned it too. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right even though it scared you? Have you ever had to choose between the easy path and the true path? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might inspire someone else who's facing their own impossible choice. And if this story moved you, if Bradley's sacrifice matters to you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. The more people who understand the importance of speaking truth to power, the harder it becomes for injustice to thrive. Thank you for listening to Bradley's story, and to ours. May you always have the courage to do what's right, even when it costs you everything. May you never look away from suffering when you have the power to stop it. And may you always remember that one person, armed with truth, can change the world.